Before we can understand the King Crane Commission, we need to understand the idea that made it possible and the contradiction that made it fail. The idea is self-determination, the right of people to decide their own political future. It sounds simple, but it's not. The term itself was not born in Washington. It was first deployed prominently in 1917 by the Bolsheviks, Lenin and Trotsky, as a direct call to dismantle the world's colonial empires along national lines. It was a revolutionary weapon, and when it began gaining traction among subject peoples everywhere, the Western powers moved quickly to co-opt it. British Prime Minister Lloyd George adopted the language first, stating that Britain would respect the consent of the governed in the post-war division of lands. Then Woodrow Wilson made it the moral centerpiece of his 14 points in February 1918. But it makes so much sense for America to use that language because it stems right from its own spirit and values. The American Revolution was all about anti-imperialism and consent of the governed. The Declaration of Independence is pretty much a universal declaration for the right of self-determination. But here is where we must be honest and where it gets intricate. And this is very important to understand everything American today. Wilson's self-determination did not mean that all peoples could choose their governments freely. And here is when Orientalism and white supremacy come to play. Here is how Edward Said defined it. Orientalism is an entire system of knowledge built by Western scholars, administrators, and writers that constructs the Orient as a fixed, timeless, exotic, and fundamentally inferior place. It does not describe the East. It imagines it. It invents it. It produces an image of the Arab, the Muslim, the Ottoman, passive, irrational, sensual, fanatical, and then treats that image, that imagination, as fact. The second word I used is white supremacy, and that's the institutional and intellectual conviction that Western Christian civilization represented the pinnacle of human development, and that all other civilizations existed on a lower rung of a ladder that only the West had climbed. So Europeans deserved self-determination. Everyone else, not really. The people of the Ottoman lands, Arabs in particular, were placed by Wilson himself in the category of those not yet ready to govern themselves. They require, in his own words, extensive tutelage before independence could be considered. Now, this is a civilizational assumption that did and still occupies American and most European administrations. This is how Trump speaks, and it was widely shared among American elites of the era who viewed Protestant Christianity as the engine of progress, and Islam specifically as, and these are their documented words, not mine, wrong and hateful, backward, uniquely unsuited to modern civilization. Same words, by the way, echoed by even congressmen today after 120 years in the United States. There were dissenting voices, of course. Anthropologist, for example, Franz Boas, was already arguing that differences between peoples were cultural, not biological, that no race was inherently superior. Some intellectuals were beginning to question whether the West truly held a monopoly on the right way to live. But these were minority voices. The dominant assumption remained some peoples are ready to freedom or for freedom, and some must wait to be civilized into it. And yet, within this contradiction, the King Crane Commission was born because Wilson's language, however limited in his own mind, had created an opening, an obligation. If self-determination meant anything at all, then someone had to ask these people. Someone had to go and listen to them. This is exactly what King and Crane were sent to do. The question is, who were they, and what did they find when they listened? This is our next episode.